And welcome back to episode 154 of the To Become Family podcast. Let me adjust the microphone. I don't know how close that has to be to my mouth.
We'll find out. We got new mics.
So we're working with new mics today. We apologize for last week. I know that there were some audio issues last week. Full disclosure, the procrastination game is super hard.
Oof.
And it's not out of, no, actually, I don't even think it's out of procrastination. It's just the time that we have to do this. And right now, this is the time we have, which just
the night
the night
before we
before,
release.
the night before, because we're planning, because we these are planned out now, but we're also planning like other content around it. So just so that like there's a synergy in what we're doing, and because of that,
/ we also
have kids.
have kids and are very busy on the weekends. So Monday nights it is.
Yep. So we would rather sacrifice audio quality over, spending time at soccer or anything else that we're doing. So
Youth
apologies,
ministry.
and it's not that you our audience come after that. Well, I guess you
You
do.
kind of do.
But like, it's not because you're not important. It's just that we try to make sure that family life always comes first. So
Last night was stomach bug night
it
again.
was back at the Ortega house. Another stomach bug came through.
Thankfully, we made it out pretty okay.
Yeah, we survived. But so we're here tonight recording, and one thing we will try to keep from you is unnecessary banter. I'm speaking to myself, similarly to how I was talking to the youth group yesterday and making points for myself.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, maybe one banter, one story.
Tell us.
No, just to tell them what I'm talking about. So yesterday, before adoration, I spoke to the youth group kids, and the things that I was saying, I had planned out some of it, and then I said a couple things that I hadn't planned out, but I felt very convicted by, and I was like, oh,
Oh man.
I need to hear that. And then you said the same thing, and I was just like, dang it. You
Shoot.
said something about my wisdom. I was like, that was not my wisdom because I didn't want to say that.
Yeah.
That came from someplace else.
Yep. Someone else.
But
So
I hope the audio is good today.
yeah. And maybe
Um,
we'll get some wisdom from not us tonight as well.
yeah. So today we're going to jump into for those of you that are just joining us now. Sorry, I keep adjusting the mic. I don't. I hope this sounds good. Oh, my nerves. Um, So those of you that are just joining us, this is part 3 of our Resurrected Marriage series, where we are just unpacking a little bit of what a marriage that is of the Lord and in the Lord looks like. Um, so in the first episode, we talked about grace and focusing on grace over the grit of trying to like grind out a good marriage. Last week, we talked about focusing on the root of the things that we want to get out of marriage, as opposed to just focusing on the good fruit and the bad fruit. Like, really taking the bad fruit and not just plucking the bad fruit out of the trees, but unpacking what's causing that fruit to be manifested, and then going to the trees, the root of the bad trees, and uprooting that all together. And in the next few episodes, we're going to focus on like specific areas of your marriage where there could be bad fruit. And we're going to talk about 2 of the most common ones where we hear from people, from their experience and from what people share with us, either it be on Instagram or other social medias or in person after we talk. But so today we're going to focus on lust and how a marriage and a couple can take any issues of lust and convert them and transform them into opportunities and growth in love. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about Alexander Harvard, because he has some good points on this too. So, anything you want to start off with preliminarily before jumping into lust and love or anything like that?
No, I want to reiterate, if you are just joining us for this episode, to take a pause and listen to the other 2 first, because I do think that they help set a foundation. Sorry, the other 3 episodes. The other episodes, because I think they set a good foundation for, like, we're really trying to build from one episode to the next. And while this one probably seems more clickbaity, like, oh, I want to hear what they have to say about this topic, that this comes from this comes from the other stuff first, and like recognizing the very, very great gift that we have in the grace of the sacrament of marriage, and how that cannot be discounted, and then how leaning into grace and allowing grace to work in our lives, we can start to notice parts of our marriage that are not resurrected yet and could use some resurrection. So this may be one of them, but if you're not tapped into that grace, then this isn't going to be that helpful.
Yeah. So I think first, and this is the faux philosopher in me, I think defining terms is super important. Before we like dive into anything. So on Instagram, I just made a reel today about the differences, really quick, but differences between lust and normal sexual desire.
Mm,
And I think it's important to have a distinction between like what is lust,
yeah.
what is sexual desire, and what is love.
Mm,
Before diving into like, oh, is lust an issue? Because I think what happens to most of us is that for most of us that have grown up in a Catholic culture that has tried to promote chastity, tried to promote, don't have sex before marriage, don't do anything before marriage, make sure you're engaged, you want to be pure on your wedding night, and then now you're married and you're like, okay, now everything goes. And if like I've walked with young men before who assumed any sexual attraction or sexual desire they had for a woman was lustful,
mhm.
which like you could, we can get into the weeds of that in a little bit, but then then those young men get married and they're like, all right, now I have those same feelings for
Towards
my
my
wife.
wife. Yeah.
Is that okay? And it's not just like, is that okay, but like they can't differentiate between like what's a normal sexual drive and what's like, no, that's disordered, that's lust.
Right.
So like that can be an issue within marriage. So I think defining those is very important.
Yeah. I think that's huge too because yeah, there's definitely um like a physiological experience of arousal and sexual desire, and then there's an emotional, interpersonal, psychological one, and then there's the disordered versus the rightly ordered, then there's like different um levels or experiences. We've talked about this before, even spontaneous arousal versus responsive arousal. So, like timing of it and how it comes about, and maybe you and your spouse experience sexual arousal differently. So, it may elicit some sort of shame, either in one of you or both of you, because you don't experience it the same way. So, you don't understand the other person. And you're like, well, you don't experience it the way I do. So, that must be wrong. And so I think that there can be a lot of misunderstanding and nervousness around this because, like you said, growing up, um, you were at least like growing up in Catholic or Christian culture, um, you were at least taught to try to save yourself for marriage, to try to avoid some certain sexual behaviors with people you're dating or one night stands, or and you've got like the opposite where you've got people talking about body count and like, oh, it's fine if you, as long as you love the person, it's okay, whatever the context is. So there's so much background that you're coming into marriage with that I think like we try really hard to define terms so that you and your spouse can have some common language to talk from. So hopefully this can
Right.
help with that.
Because another thing that can happen, so you could have like, yeah, you can come into marriage with like complete opposite views on sexuality in general. And then you could either end up in a marriage where you're like, all right, well now everything goes. So now you're like everything's allowable and everything's doable. Or you can get in a marriage also that's like the other extreme of we can't experience any of this. Every feeling that you have is negative, and like you shouldn't have to feel any emotions or any type of sexual drive, and like it should just be done for just for having kids and nothing else. So I think having, like you said, having terms that we can communicate with is important, but also I think it's having terms to communicate with to that we can internally communicate with ourselves and understand, like at least it's helpful for me of like this feeling is blank, it's okay or it's not okay, or like this needs to be something I handle separately. I don't know. That was helpful for me of having St. John Paul's input on like where to put my different impulses versus just feeling like all of this is always negative. So I'm going to tell you how I define, or how it's what's helped me define the different understandings of my like passions. Sorry. So I may use the word sexual desire or passions very interchangeably. I mean the same thing. Um, because one thing that like Aquinas puts in the Summa, like you have like the carnal passions within you. So like that's kind of what I'm thinking of when I talk about it. So um, the way I would differentiate lust versus a natural or a healthy sexual desire would be not by the experience itself, right? Because like you could in my mind, you can experience again passion, sexual attraction, sexual desire. Like you can feel a impulse towards a thing in the sexual realm, and that is completely outside of your control. So like you can't control what you're attracted to. You can't control what, sorry if this sounds inappropriate, but like what turns you on. Like you can't control that. So like the impulse itself, the drive itself is not something I think you can quantifiably say this is morally wrong. Like you can't like, oh, if you have this many feelings, or if like it hits you in like the this part of your brain, therefore it's immoral. Like you can't
Yeah.
quantify it. It's just like you have an
Or
impulse.
happens at this time, or
Right.
like the stimuli is
Hmm.
disordered, so then therefore that response to the stimuli is
Right.
disordered,
Like
right?
you
And
can't
like, yeah.
control that.
Mhm.
So what I think, and this I think goes in line with what's in love and responsibility, is that it's not the impulse itself that's bad, but it's like what you do with the impulse. So you are you have a drive, and that drive either leads you to pursue a person for use, or to pursue a person for love. Like you have that you have that choice. And I think that's what takes a sexual drive and makes it either loving or lustful. Right? So like I can experience a sexual drive and desire my spouse to use them so that I can have an outlet for my sexual drive and my sexual desires, or I can have the sexual drive and pursue my spouse to love them. Doesn't necessarily mean sexually. It just means I have the drive, and I'm like, all right, what do I do with these powers? What do I do with these passions? And like it should lead me to love my beloved. If I try to love someone who is not my beloved, that is lustful, because like I'm not truly committing myself to them. I am just using them as a means to an end. And even if I pursue my beloved, but I'm only looking to be satiated, then I'm pursuing them as a means
Yeah.
to an end as well.
Like, what can I get out of this? And how does this either release the tension that I'm feeling, or how does this like enhance the tension and experience that I'm feeling? And like neglecting to also include them in the full experience. Because I think one thing that's important too is that it's not bad to desire that your encounter with one another be satisfying or gratifying or feel good. Like that is part of the point of like why it feels good in the first place, why these feelings can be motivating. And so because I think that sometimes even this like the creeping in of purity culture or whatever you want to call it, you can get nervous that like, okay, anything that feels good for me, or like trying to help direct things to feel good for me is bad. Like in terms of foreplay or positions or things like that. But and so like that's not a bad thing as long as you are remembering to include your spouse in that. Are they also enjoying the experience? And that I'm not forgetting that they are a person, that I want to experience all of that with the whole person instead of just like body to body.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a slippery slope that you have to protect against, because I think even within the marital act, you could, so like sex is what I mean when I say the marital act. Um,
Finding terms all over the place.
like you could even get into the like, okay, I want to do this, whatever it is, because I enjoy it, but I know my spouse enjoys it. We're on the same page, but like that may not always be the case, and
Mhm.
like you have to be aware, because like there could be times where you're like you pursue a thing internally for selfish reasons, but externally it seems like it's the same as always, but like you have to be aware of yourself.
Yeah,
And
because the behavior itself is not necessarily
right.
the issue or
Hmm.
the positive. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's always keeping track of like, are you using your spouse or not? Because I
Mhm.
think you could very quickly go from loving your spouse to using them if you start. Again, I can't. You'd have to be. It's a thing you discern on your own. I would also say that you're. Oh, I had another thought with using your spouse. It'll come back to me
Okay.
at an inappropriate time.
I also think too that I'm not sure if this is where you're hoping the conversation would go, but I do think that it's important for spouses to be aware of all of these internal movements of like, am I using my spouse? I think you're referencing like for physical gratification, for like for bodily pleasure. But I do think that there is a more subtle trap that can happen in married sexuality of like using your spouse for some sort of other emotional gratification or um like, it's almost like emotional sensory seeking of, like, I am searching for a stress release. Um I'm searching for affirmation. I'm searching for, something else to, like, satisfy a longing that I'm having. And if it is something that is falling short of a longing for love and to love, like, that "and" part is really important, that it is for unification. It is for to experience the full exchange of love between persons, like, to give and to get. But if we are only focusing on the getting part of whatever thing that we are hoping for, some like sliver of love, um, then we have to really be aware of that, because in the exchange of married sexuality, that is speaking such a full language with our bodies. Like, we are saying so much with our bodies, and if we only mean a little piece of it, we just have to be really careful to, like, acknowledge that in ourselves.
I wanna flesh that out a little bit more, no pun intended. But so, like, because I think so you said, it's not okay to pursue your spouse for you said something other you said the word affirmation, that's the one that stuck out to me. You said a couple of other things.
Mhm.
So only pushback I'd have, and you have a better like you'll be able to come up with a good answer to this, would be that like I think my spouse is the correct person to go to when I'm seeking affirmation
Mm,
or desiring affirmation, or if I'm
sure.
desiring connection, I'm desiring to be seen, understood, heard.
Oh,
Like
sure.
you're the right person to go to for that for me, because like because of the sacrament, you are the correct means to that. So like I shouldn't go to the internet for that. I shouldn't go
Mhm.
to my neighbor or my friend who's a female to like give me that
Yeah,
affirmation,
yeah,
when
yeah.
the
My
reality is like I
best
should
friend,
go
or
to my
even, like, your parents, or, like, yeah,
right.
any
Like
yeah,
the first person I should go to is my spouse.
yeah.
Um
Primary, yeah. Mhm.
and so so why is it wrong then to go to my spouse for those things through sex? Like why is that?
I think that if it's trying to, answer a question in your heart of, like, is "Am I worthy?" and my spouse giving me sex affirms that I am worthy, that I am good, that I am lovable, then we are misusing that, like, gift that we are receiving for them. Like, yes, it does speak, like, "You are lovable, and you are wonderful, and you are beautiful," or "You are" whatever, like, "I desire you." And that is a good thing. That's a good thing to communicate, and that's a good thing to receive. But if that is my primary reason for pursuing sex, um, then we are not rightly ordering that. And that, like, that should be something that should be communicated in a different way of, like, I'm not feeling lovable right now. And, like, bring that to your spouse through, like, verbal communication too. And um yeah, and not, like, initiating or pursuing sex to receive that affirmation. And I think that often this sounds so, like, cliche, but, like, the cross-shaped hole in your heart, but, like, there you're also seeking something that your spouse may probably isn't going to be able to give you fully. Like, if that's what you're seeking, then there may be something deeper that needs to be brought to prayer, that needs to be brought to healing, like we talked about last week. And I think that in using sex to try to find that, we can really, like, hurt and wound our marriage, because we're not asking for the right thing when we're
Right.
doing
And
that.
like that becomes the misuse of sex, and again like you're using the other person for a thing. So like the best way I could explain it in terms that someone like me might understand, because
Mhm.
like you made a lot you make sense, and I totally agree with what you're saying. And what you when you're talking like the idea of being naked without shame came
Mhm,
up,
mhm.
like I
Yeah.
thought of that,
Yeah.
of like I could be someone who definitely can pursue you and not share my whole heart, right? I can be just hoping things come from our time together. Again, like that I feel lovable, worthy, all the things, and then never actually share them with you.
Mhm.
Right. I even if like they do get satiated and you do calm whatever storm's happening because we were able to like, okay, at least she loves me. That doesn't mean that I actually am sharing all of myself with you, because like a part of me still hiding and like holding and like, okay, I don't want her to know I feel this way, but I want her to make it better. And like that's not what sex is supposed to be used for. Like that then sex becomes a band-aid in your marriage rather than like a unification. It's like, how much more intimate would it be if I'm able to share the things that are on my heart, and then we can still consummate, and you still love me despite the things I shared. That is to me like a greater, um that is what sex should be used like. And then there's a greater unification that happens there. There's less using and misusing, because then I know that you're going to, even though I know you were going to give me the affirmation, I'm no longer pursuing you for the affirmation. I'm pursuing you for you. And in return, your pursuit of me is the affirmation I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So like there's the mutual exchange versus the contractual, I give you this, you give.
Yeah. And I think a clue too for like um how am I pursuing and how am I perceiving sex with my spouse is also how you internally experience not having sex with your spouse. Like, am I experiencing that as like a rejection of me, of like who I am? Am I experiencing that as a like a reflection on me? Like if tonight is not the night, is that because I'm bad, because I'm dirty, because I'm unworthy and stuff like that could be a clue to like, okay, there's something deeper going on here that I was pursuing sex for maybe a not right on target, a disordered reason if I'm having a very like visceral or extreme reaction to the other person, like I'm not in the mood, I'm not aroused, I'm not available tonight because of XYZ, and then you don't take them for their word for that, and like you turn it into something else. Or it could be that, and then that's something else that needs to be pursued in a different way and understood in a different way. But like if there's a big response to like not being able to, that could be a clue that lust is an issue in your
Yeah.
marriage.
And I think that's, it's like, lust is on a spectrum. I feel like there's a spectrum of lust though, right?
Yeah.
There's like the I think the very surface easy level that most people can like identify right off the bat is the, I only want sexual release, and I'm going to pursue it
Mhm.
to like any degree, anybody, anything that'll give it to me, whether it be the computer, cell phone,
Yeah.
person, spouse,
Mhm.
like whatever. And then there's like the one that we just finished talking about, which is like more hidden,
Yeah.
and like that was the hidden lust that was within our marriage early on.
Yep.
um but so, and I think that's something again you bring to prayer, because you want God to root that out, whether it be at the very starting line, or it's like it's a super deep seated thing that's still
Yeah.
hiding. Either way, it needs to, and it could be something like you said, like the not being able to have sex could be something that roots that out. So like I think you, thanks be to God for the opportunities to recognize that in our own marriage of like,
Yeah.
we couldn't, and that brought a lot of it to the
Yeah, yeah.
surface.
And like yeah, and again, like looking at this fruit, if this fruit is the deeper root is lust, right? Like that's the thing that we need to like uproot and heal. But if the fruit is we're not having sex a lot and we don't really know why,
Or someone's always
that's a
feeling
bad fruit.
rejected
If
or
someone's
always
always
angry,
feeling rejected, if someone's always the one that's saying no, if some like these
or
are
someone's pestering all the time and can never take no for an answer.
right, all of these are different fruits that are not good. And maybe you're like afraid to say that they're bad fruit, but like they're not good. So we need to get to a deeper root. And maybe there is some form on the spectrum of lust that, like, am I just now that I'm married, I'm not using the computer, I'm not using my girlfriend, I'm not using, but like I am still using my spouse. Like, because now I should be getting the green light, I should be getting the thumbs up, and I just expect it all the time. That would still be lust in your marriage. But yeah, again, like looking at this good and bad fruit, are there some stinky fruits? Is there some bruised fruit
Stinky
here?
fruits.
Stinky fruit. Are your fruits attracting flies? Um, yeah, so like is this a little bit more subtle? Is it not quite as obvious that it's totally rotten fruit? All
Well,
right.
and so
Alexander Havard,
no. No,
you
this is,
picked up your book.
I picked up the book because what you said triggered a thought. But so one of the things that, so this happened in our marriage. We were stuck at this. Oh, they can see now.
Sorry.
If you yawn, they can see it.
It's late,
You need
guys.
coffee. It's
I
not
tried to
even
hold it
10
up.
o'clock.
I tried to hold it up.
What one thing with that happened within our marriage is that we were like Monica said, situations cause a lot of the bad fruit to come to the surface, or and one of the ways that helped me with uprooting, so like I think I had more issues in this end than you did, um And one a few things that happened with us, I started reading Love and Responsibility, and like that uprooted a lot. Learning Saint John Paul II, then learning about Saint Joseph through Saint John Paul II. A lot of yeah, learning about well, learning about him in general, and then like there's a private devotion to his chaste heart. It's not has not been like it's not widely done by the church, but like learning more about Saint Joseph and desiring a heart like his, and just coming to understand that like in chastity I can love my beloved the way she deserves, and it doesn't have to be through sexual nature all the time. So like being able to put the correct feelings in the correct boxes helped me a lot. And now like years later, I've read this is a book called Virtuous Leadership by Alexander Harvard. It's a very very good book, and some of the stuff here I wish I had learned sooner when it comes to mastery of the heart and the mind. He says in self control. So I want to just pull a couple quotes that I got from here that I thought are very appropriate to for people who are struggling with lust and unsure of what to do about it. Because we could say like, "Hey, these things are going to come up," and most people be like, "Yeah, I know they come up. What are you supposed to do about it?" We're not going to say pray it away because we already said that in the first episode. Like, there's 100% like you need to rely on grace first, and everything you do to respond to those inklings, like that's grace working in your heart. So if you feel like you are struggling with lust in your marriage, and now you're like, "All right, got to do something about it," that's God's grace
That's right.
working within
Yeah,
you
right there.
to get
Mhm.
you to either repent, to start pursuing different things, or even to pursue Him more. Now, this is assuming you are praying daily, you are um, receiving the sacraments, and you're pursuing the sacraments the way you ought to, pursuing the Lord through the sacraments, and then also pursuing your spouse. With those things in mind, you should also implement some very human growth things so that you could build the correct virtue so you can continue to grow in the virtue of chastity. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think one thing I don't know that we articulated it in one sentence, but so lust is a vice. It is a like kind of the root and the bad fruit would be like behaviors that you have. So it's something that you don't want in your life, and then chastity is the virtue that opposes the vice of lust. So chastity is a virtue of self-mastery. I'm sure you'll go into it more a little bit, but so just to pair those two together, like if you're struggling with lust, the virtue that you want to pursue is chastity.
Yes. And so one so this is a leadership book by Alexander Harvard.
So
And I
it's
think
not a marriage book.
it's not a marriage book. No, you're not going to get anything about marriage in this. But so one of the things that he talks about here is he talks about all the different virtues and how they affect leadership. Specifically leadership that's more Christian based, like Christian based ethics. Um, sorry, no, I'm not gonna correct myself. Okay, stop. Um, you guys don't care. I care, but it's
He
fine.
is just arguing with himself. I'm not making
Um,
faces at him or anything.
you can see it on video on YouTube. So one of the things he talks about here is how a leader who lacks self control is not a good leader. And like, oh yeah, no, duh. But I think that a lot of us think that we could have struggle with vices, and even because no one knows that we struggle with these vices, that it's okay. We can still go out and lead our family. We can still go out and
Yeah.
lead,
If we
at
have
work and
private
careers.
vices,
Yeah, if
yeah.
you have private vices, no one knows it's okay.
Yeah.
And he kind of points out some of the issues with that thought. So here in one quote, he says that self control has a direct influence on how leaders carry out their professional duties. Consider the matter of time management. Leaders know that they must devote sufficient time to their most important functions: long term planning, the professional and moral education of staff, motivating colleagues, etc. Yet surveys indicate that leaders rarely spend more than 10% of their time on such vital functions. They tend to do what they like rather than what they ought. This is a natural human weakness. It is also a failure. Sorry, it is also a failure of the virtue of self control. And I thought that was very interesting to show that like if we struggle with a vice like lust, which is very associated with having no self mastery, no self control, and yes, pursuing what I like rather than pursuing what I ought to pursue. Um, Saint Thomas Aquinas talks about the effeminacy, right? No, not effeminacy. Yeah, it being an effeminate male, right? Being one who would rather pursue comfort than pursue struggle. And that also comes from like being able to tell yourself like what you want to do what you should do, not what you want to do. And that will seep into other areas of your life, and specifically your marriage, if you don't root out the lust. So for example, like you will, if you struggle with lust, and you don't do anything about it, you're going to struggle with spending the correct amount of time with your children. You're going to struggle with being on your phone all the time. You're going to struggle with like all these little things will continue to pop up
Mhm.
because you don't have self control.
Yeah. And so if you are trying to uproot the vice of lust, you've now identified like there's lust in my marriage and I am at fault for this lust. Or maybe it's both of you, but like, okay, I'm going to take personal ownership. I'm going to have self mastery. It doesn't sound like it would, that the two would go together, but things like wake up when your alarm goes off and exercise, like stick to the exercise routine that you set for yourself and eat well and um like be on time for work and um it like go to daily mass, like pursue a holy hour, like do things, like insert harder things into your life and like stick to that. And that those little habits, those little behaviors of self-mastery are going to positively influence your uprooting of lust.
Yeah, because the way lust manifests itself in marriage, at least from our experience and from my experience particularly, is like you love your spouse well, and then there's a moment where lust creeps in really quickly. So, for example, um, if I'm pursuing you, and this is what's happened before, like if I pursued you and I thought all things were a go for that night, and then you say, you know what, I'm not feeling well, I have a choice in that moment to either try to keep pressuring you to try to see if something happens, or I could be like, okay, my wife doesn't feel well, it's okay. I'm like, okay, it's fine. And I know in the past I didn't have the muscles to tell myself, no, don't do the stupid thing. Like as much as I wanted to, like I didn't have it. And it was just an impulse to be like, and just even like my face would seem upset and like you could just tell. And I wounded you because of
You
those
were
things. Cause like,
quieter, you were
yes.
shorter. Yep.
And it wasn't because like you were being manipulative or neglectful. Like you just had 3 kids all day and you're exhausted and you're like, no, I'm actually really, really tired, which you're allowed to be. You're mothering our children. And I didn't have the muscles for it. So, and similarly to how a priest friend of ours counsels a lot of young men, like if they struggle with lust, he says, okay, start making your bed, start cleaning around your house, like start doing other things that you don't like to do so that you develop that ability to say no. So that when those moments come and like it's not going to be like your phone's going to it's not like your phone's suddenly going to go on websites and be like, "Oh, I have to say no on my phone." Like it the way it happens in a marriage is very very subtle where like you have to make a choice of like am I pursuing myself or my spouse? Am I going to choose lust or am I going to choose love? And if you don't have the muscle or the ability to say no to it, you're just going to continue to go with
Yeah.
the flow.
And I think that there's a misconception that is much more common than I originally thought, was that like that men have needs and that they need to have an ejaculatory release. Like that is a biological like health thing that men have to do.
Toes start falling off,
Like
eyes change
they will
colors.
combust like
Oh my goodness.
and and
And
that
this is like spread we hear it all the time.
right. And that is a lie. Like that is not true. That's not medically accurate. Like and you think of priests, like you don't think that priests have, you know, sexual desires or arousal or things like that. Like they are still men. They are fully still a man. Like they don't receive the sacrament of holy orders and then suddenly become a different being. Like they are still biologically a man, just like a husband is this like the same. So they can survive without any sex period. Any single man, any whomever, they survive. Your husband will survive. He actually will. It might be uncomfortable. Like there are definitely, like you're saying, like it could be uncomfortable, especially if you are out learning lust. Like if you are used to a much more regular release and then something is changing, uh, whether you're giving up porn and masturbation or whether you are not having sex as frequently because you have whatever NFP, you're deciding that this is your way to pursue, like to not
Exodus 90 or
like,
what? Sorry.
like whatever
It's
it
Lent.
is,
Sorry. Okay,
whatever
stop.
it is, um, and you are unlearning this, right? That like it's going to feel physically uncomfortable, and that is okay. So is like building any other muscle. Like if you are starting to exercise, you exercise, and then you are uncomfortable for a while, and you're like, guess what? I'm getting stronger because I feel this way. Like, there are certain
One of the
things.
things that and you say this, and this is not an indictment on you and your friend who say this, but you love feeling sore after workouts, right? So feeling sore after a workout means that you don't do that workout enough, and that's why you're sore. So I'm like, every
You
time I'm
gotta
sore
keep
after a
doing it
workout,
so it's not
every
uncomfortable
time I'm
anymore.
sore after a workout, I'm like, dang it,
Yes.
I thought I was covering this muscle group and I'm not.
But that's kind of my point though with, like, with if you are uncomfortable because you are not having the sexual release, it will eventually not be uncomfortable anymore because you will keep practicing it and that muscle will have developed and, like, you will be this, like,
Theoretical
this
muscle. That's
theoretical
not a real
like,
muscle.
not a real muscle, but that muscle will have grown and be stronger, and it's called that muscle is called self-mastery, and, like, it won't be uncomfortable anymore, and it'll actually at some point, you'll be like, "Oh, wow, I used to, and now I don't anymore," and, like,
Yeah,
that
this is
is
exactly.
good
So this
for
is from.
you.
I should have said it earlier. It was page 84 in the book, and now I'm on page 85. Many people in leadership roles fail to control their passions. Seminars on time management, however sophisticated, are no solution because the problem for such people is not technical in nature but moral. They need to learn to control their passions. They need to learn to say no. And I feel like that is just so wise. And it's very simple. And I don't think we tell I tend to be harder on my brothers out there, but like I don't think we tell enough men like they just need to be able to just say no. Like that's a skill, is a strength. It's freedom to be able to say no. So like I think we talked about this last week. Like we have one of our sons who is afraid to go do a thing. And we're like, that makes me want to make you go do it because you're afraid. Like I don't want you to feel a fear. You're not free. I'd rather you be free to say no to the thing rather than feel like, oh, I just can't. So like it's just I think being able to live in freedom is very important for men in general. Um, and you want to be able to be free to love your wife the way you want to love her. And if you're stuck with that I'm in a crossroads. I either make say a thing that's for my own selfish pleasure, or I do a thing that's for my wife. And I can never really do the one for my wife because I'm always stuck thinking about myself first, impulsively, whatever. Like you're not free. And that's something that the Lord desires from you. He
Yeah.
wants you to be free.
And if there is sexual frustration in your marriage, like, that again is the bad fruit. It's pointing you at something, and it's up to you guys to cooperate with grace to try to figure out, like, what is the root of that sexual frustration? Like, is it because of lust and we are misusing one another, or one of us is misusing the other? Or is it like, has has sex been put on the back burner? It's, like, lower on the to-do list, it's not a priority, and maybe, like, we are not actually giving fully of ourselves to one another often enough. Like, that might be it too, but, like, you cannot just, like, live in sexual frustration and keep being frustrated. Like, you have to pursue the virtue and the good for your marriage, and, like, often these are symptoms, but, like, sex is good for your marriage, but disordered sex is not good for your marriage. It's actually
Right.
really bad for your marriage, right?
It's
So
not just like, oh, just give in and have sex.
right, that's not the answer.
It's
Yes.
get to the root. Um, and while you're working on that, like you said, like so you might, as you're working on developing the muscle, and this is for husbands and wives, and like you feel like it's just hard for this not to be happening, and I have all this desire within me, and like I feel, because I remember and I know what it's like to feel like sexual desire is just like welling up within you. And like I have nowhere to put this. What the heck do I do? Um, it's not we're not saying to repress that desire. Um, and so I want to read what Havard says on page 86 about the desire, and then we'll unpack that a little bit. But he says the human body is as much God's creation as the human soul, and the passions a valid expression of our God-given human nature. So your sexual passion, your desire, is it's a positive thing. It's a good thing that you have because it's something that God created. It follows that curbing passions by renouncing material reality is not the way to go. So again, we don't want to just say like, well, if I can't have sex, then like I'm just gonna ignore this altogether, or I'm
Mhm.
just gonna repress it.
I'm gonna shame myself for
Yep.
feeling
Oh,
this
this is so
way.
bad.
Mhm.
Or the other option is like, oh, I'm just gonna dive in completely and just whatever. And like you can't do either. Like that's not the way to go. Um, what is required instead is the subordination of passions to reason by means of the virtue of self control. Passions, therefore, must not be repressed, but rather directed by and subordinated to the mind. And I think that is going back full circle to like, am I using my spouse or am I loving my spouse? Like you having a sexual desire, even if it feels like it's welling up within you, that's a positive and good thing. You have a choice though of like how are you going to use that desire? Because I've found that when I'm feeling like, because it's not like my, like you said, like I just because I feel not controlled by this anymore doesn't mean that I don't experience it. Like I still experience it, but I've found that I can direct it. So the title of the this section is called direction rather than repression. Like instead of repressing it, which is what I used to do, and then just be completely frustrated, there's the I direct it to pursuing you and loving in a different way, right? Like and I try to make it an active choice. Sometimes I do it in the wrong direction. Like I do a thing that you don't even notice I did, which is fine. I still did a thing, and I'm like, I try to love you, and then I'm like, hey, do you notice that? You're like, oh, thank you, and then I'm like, okay,
It didn't hit the way
that's
you're
not the
hoping.
thing I was hoping for. But regardless of how it's received, the desire and the passion is still used. It's like it's an energy that's still used for you because it's made for it. It's supposed to be
Yes.
for you.
Supposed to be
Um,
self-gift too.
right. So
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
how can I self gift? How can I give myself? Maybe not sexually, but like, how are other ways I can give myself? And anytime I experience this sexual desire, it's like, okay, this is my indication that I want to love my wife. How can I love her properly right now? And that's the like redirection rather than
Right.
repressing.
And it's like and using your reason because sometimes it might be like, "Oh,
It's date
it's
night.
date night, but it's just not nighttime yet," and, like, the kids are still around, and the mother-in-law just got here for babysitting, and, like, this is not the time. Your reason tells you
Mom, go
this moment no, she's here to babysit.
home.
Don't leave. But, like, so you like, everyone could acknowledge that there is some level of reasonability to, like, when sexual desire should not be used for sex, right? And, like, it might just need to be paused, but so if you at least have that basis, then you can again, with your reason, be like, "Actually, there's probably more reasonability to this, that, like, okay, this is a valid reason for why we cannot have sex right now, or why my desire cannot be used in this direction at this moment." And it could, again, just be pure timing, or it could be something much greater, um your like, you've discerned natural family planning, and it's phase 2, and like, you've both discerned and agreed. It could be because, like, we're working on avoiding lust and trying to choose chastity, so, here I am, I'm gonna practice, and I'm going to choose to do I'm still going to have that arousal and desire for my spouse, and I'm gonna make sure that it's directed at their good and that I am going to give myself to something good for them. Because that is what the full exchange of sex is, right? It's like I'm giving totally to them and I am openly receiving my spouse in return. But like in this moment, reason tells me that I have to be self gift in a different direction. And this is like the prompting. This is the grace. Like God made my body and it is good. And so like that sexual desire is not a bad thing in and of itself. It's not immoral. It's not amoral. It's actually like it's good. And I just need to put it in the right place. Ha ha ha.
Mm, I got the joke. No, that's it.
That's it.
And in shameless plug, if you want to know all our thoughts on this subject, we actually wrote a book about it. It's called Lovemaking, and it's where is it? Oh, it's on the top shelf. It's on the top shelf. Can you see the
All the
top shelf? You can't
wires
see the
and
top
stuff
shelf.
are in the way.
It's on the top shelf. Yes, we wrote a book, Lovemaking, and it's how to talk to your spouse, how to talk about sex with your spouse. And yeah, we dive more into this. Um, Probably we don't unpack the idea of lust as much as we did here, but we do talk about the main points here. But then it's really like
Only can fit so much in a book without
so much
people
in the
wanting
book.
to put it down.
Yeah. But that this is, I think this is a sticking point for a lot of people in their marriage, and I hope that you got some things that you could bring back to your spouse. Maybe this is an episode you could send them, just listen to it together and then discuss like, what areas are we struggling in, what things can we do. And feel free to always reach out to us too on any of the social media platforms. Like um, we have a hard time not loving people, and so if you reach out to us, like we will definitely answer, and we will pray for you and check in because we want people to thrive. We want your marriages to thrive. And yeah, buy our book. You can buy multiple books. There's 3 books, but you can become our love making first. But there's also
You
other
do
books
talk
too.
about the chaste heart of Saint Joseph in your book.
Yeah, I talk about Saint Joseph. So you want to know more about Saint Joseph, and you can buy that book. Go to Joseph. That's on Amazon. The Go to Joseph for Children is on Amazon. But
That one doesn't really talk about lust.
no, there's no lust. Well, but we do talk about self control
Yeah.
and start like ensuring that for our kids. It's funny.
Oh, yeah.
Our daughter,
Virtue.
you were reading it with our daughter, and she's like, "This is really good."
Yep.
You even said like, "Oh, this is pretty good," and we're like, "Yeah, we forgot
We
we wrote it."
reread it. Yep. It's been a while. Anyways, it was very good.
We should do. We didn't. We missed both feast days. It was Lent. It was Lent. But so thank you so much for being here. Be sure to check us out on Instagram and on YouTube. And check out our Substack as well. And where else? What else are we doing? Anything else?
That's it
No.
for now. We'll see you at the next
See
episode.
you at the next episode. Stopping and uploading now. Yeah.